Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us for today's live session of the Channel Expert Hour. We are about to get started with a live conversation with one of your peers who is going to be able to provide us with some information about adding offsite backup as an additional layer of protection for their customers' data protection and disaster recovery solutions. So this is one of the things we really enjoy doing the most in these sessions, when we can get some real live education from a partner who has done this stuff in the real world. So before we get started, let me give you just a couple of reminders and some pointers on how to participate, because we want this to be as much of an interactive session as possible. I will be serving as your host today. My name is Ryan Morris. I'm a contributing editor on the Penton Technology team, and we are working long and hard to make sure that we're putting together really valuable and actionable education programs. Part of that is we need to make sure that this is interactive, not just a one-way conversation, but an opportunity for you guys to really jump in and ask your questions and get specific answers. Part of the way we do that on these sessions, if you'll notice in your environment, the widget bar contains a number of tabs where you can click to customize the experience, make sure that you're having as good of an interactive experience as possible. But pay particular attention to that red tab there, the Q&A box. You are invited to submit questions at any point throughout today's conversation, and we will either answer them as we go in real time, or we have also reserved some time at the end of today's session for a live Q&A conversation where we will address as many of those as we can. In addition to that, we would invite you to click on that Twitter tab, because the Twitter tab allows you to tweet out from actually within this environment and share with your community some key thoughts or things that you hear and learn during today's conversation. So help us to expand the reach and make this as interactive as possible online by using that Twitter button. We also get a lot of questions about how you can participate with the interactive visuals. Everybody has a different monitor. Everybody has a different size and setup. So the window where you are seeing these live slides is customizable. Click on the corner, you can resize. Click on the top, you can drag and reposition so that you can keep your stuff going at the same time that you are participating in today's live conversation. Now, as we go, I indicated at the beginning, this is one of the kinds of conversations that we really enjoy having, because it's not just a product-based conversation. It is about solving real-world challenges that you and your customers are faced with. Today we're going to be focusing specifically on the idea of a multi-layer data protection strategy that allows you to prioritize data assets and provide that extra layer of recoverability for customers when things are most urgent and need to be back online as quickly as possible. We'll take a look at several real-world customer situations, some actual case studies of deployments where this has been done with customers, and we'll be able to talk about how it was presented and what the customer's challenges were, so that you can kind of apply that thought process to your customer situations. And then, as I indicated, we're going to reserve some time at the end of today's conversation for a live Q&A session. This is something we want you to really kind of take advantage of and pick the brains of your peers and the experts, since we have them available for you here. To help us through today's conversation, we're joined by two guest speakers, Ted Halsey, who's the VP of Marketing for eFolder, as well as Ben Zarpentine, who is the Technical Solutions Specialist for Online Computers at Online Computer Inc. I want to make sure that you guys have a chance to get to know these guys, and we'll spend a little bit of time with them. So, Ted, let me turn it over to you really quickly, and then we'll get started after that.
Okay, well, hey, greetings, everybody. This is Ted Halsey with eFolder. It's great to be here, and we're pleased to have one of our partners, Ben, from Online Computers. Ben, welcome.
Ted, thank you for having us.
Okay, well, let's do this, Ben. Why don't we just go to the next slide here and tell us a little bit about your company and what kind of clients you serve, how long you guys been in business. Give us kind of an overview for everybody on the line.
Sure. So we've been in business since 2005. We provide managed services, break-fix, software consulting, along with outsourced IT, which includes, other services like telecom, vendor management, virtual CIO. We're based in northern New Jersey. We have clients throughout, New Jersey, New York City, Pennsylvania. We have a regional office in Maryland, which services the greater Washington, D.C. area, along with Northern Virginia, and clients also in Israel. A large portion of our client base is nonprofits, which include education, cultural centers, religious centers, nursing homes, along with for-profit clients of legal, healthcare, consulting, those types of things. So it's a pretty broad base.
And then how long have you guys been partnered with eFolder, and how long have you been leveraging Veeam?
Yeah, so we've been a partner with eFolder for about 3 years now, using some of the other products in the product line. And for us, this has been a great partnership because we were already using Veeam prior to the Cloud Connect feature being available. We've been using it for about 5 years, I would say, for a lot of our clients, just because the software just works, and it's very easy to use, it's very easy to configure, it's very easy to restore. So knowing that the Cloud Connect feature was available to us through eFolder, it was a no-brainer for us.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Good introduction and welcome. So, Ryan, why don't we switch to the polling question?
Absolutely. So to help us customize today's conversation and the information that we share, we've popped up a quick polling question that we would love to get your input on. Everybody who's listening in with us today, if you can just help us answer one quick question. How do you currently back up your clients' VMs off-site? A, to your own private infrastructure. B, to public cloud infrastructure. C, we do not currently back up our clients off-site. We'll pause here for just a second as you guys have a chance to complete, because we want to make sure that we see how broadly distributed this conversation is as we are dealing with some of the challenges, not just of data protection, but also in a virtualized environment. So we will pause for just a few more seconds here. If everybody wants to click through, make sure that you have gotten your response in, then we will publish the answers here. Let me click forward. All right, so a good mix, but definitely looks like we have a leading conversation around to our own private infrastructure. Not nearly as many that are going to public cloud, but a good portion of the population that's not yet doing this. Ted, any thoughts about the audience that we're looking at here and how that might help us with today's conversation?
No, I mean, I think the figures here are not that surprising to me. I think what you always notice is that partners are always kind of evaluating different choices they have. Sometimes we'll have partners that have built their own, colo environments or data center locations to do off-site backup or replication to themselves, and then they discover later that either the capital costs or the labor costs are too high, and they want something that's more turnkey and cost-effective over time. And then I think the other thing, I'm going to talk about some market trends in the next couple slides, but I think the other big trend here is clients and customers, the end users, their requirements are evolving all the time as well. Virtualization is growing, and then the pressures on larger companies to kind of rationalize their data center footprint is making cloud backup options far more attractive, I think, to many enterprises. So we'll kind of talk about some of those trends in the next couple of slides. So why don't we do that and transition from the poll and just kind of talk about some market trends. The slide here, we didn't properly reference this at the bottom, so just so you know, this is a piece of research commissioned by SolarWinds on just the adoption of virtualization they polled 1,400 business organizations, and I don't think there's much that you'll find that's surprising here. What you see, obviously, is that the larger the company, the more likely that they've moved more of their workloads into fully virtualized environments. The other big trend, though, of course, is that virtualization is becoming mainstream in smaller businesses as well. And I think the segment of the SMB market that is served by managed service providers is usually companies that have made IT a strategic priority in their investments, and it's not surprising that clients like that have consolidated their server infrastructure and are now using virtualization technology. But what you find is that in many cases there are situations where you've virtualized the client's infrastructure, you've maybe got a backup solution like Veeam in place for local backup, but you maybe don't yet have something off-site. And really, the name of the game for MSPs today is continuity and resiliency for your clients. You have to be able to charge them a recurring revenue stream. In your managed services offering, business continuity has to be a key component of your overall value proposition, and that to provide end-to-end business continuity, you need to make sure that you have your backups off-site. Now, the challenge with historically, the challenges with Veeam in getting your off-site your backups off-site is it was costly to do it. You normally had to do site-to-site replication inside of an organization. But with Veeam version 8, there's new abilities to off-site Veeam data to a cloud environment. But the big challenge is historically is just it's very costly to do off-site backup for end users, and it's costly for partners to do it themselves in many cases. And so a cloud solution is something I think both the end user market and the partner community is looking for this sort of application. But, there are 5 kind of key reasons that I just want to go through quickly that everybody should be considering for, why to add offsite backup to Veeam deployments. And then I'll turn it over to Ben to actually walk through some real-life client case studies to see how they're using this combined solution in their client base. So, of course, the first reason is you want to follow the 3-2-1 principle or rule, which is you want 3 copies of your data on 2 different storage media locally, and you want to get 1 copy of the data off-site. So that's kind of just a best practice that we talk about a lot, the folks at Veeam talk about a lot, and a cloud repository for the data is a great way to add that final 1 in the formula. The other 2 big challenges that your clients are going to be facing is just every company is looking to simplify how they do business, and historically larger organizations have used their multi-site footprint to provide disaster recovery capabilities by backing up or replicating data from site to site. The challenge with that is that real estate is expensive, IT personnel costs are always going up, not down, and the more infrastructure that a client has to manage or you have to manage on behalf of the client, that's just costly, right? And so you see a phenomenon of data center consolidation, and you see a shift to the cloud. How can we take these workloads or these, take our backups or our off-site backups and move them to the cloud for better cost economies, to save on real estate, to save on personnel costs, and with the IT department to really, in larger companies, they want IT staff working on IT staff working on more strategic projects that create a higher level of ROI for the organization, or they maybe want to outsource things like backup and disaster recovery to their managed service provider to free up cycles for the IT department. So those are definitely huge cost drivers. The other 2 components that you want to look at is once you've got your backups off-site, then you're able to do periodic disaster recovery testing where you're actually testing the offsite backups. And that's just that extra level of assurance that in the context, if there ever is a worst case scenario disaster, you can actually, it's really essential that MSPs will do monthly or quarterly or twice yearly testing of the backups, do a DR recovery test. And there's two reasons to do that. One, of course, you just want to make sure that everything is technically working and that you can recover the environment. But the other more important piece, I think, or the thing that people get often tripped up with, is you want to make sure, as you as an MSP, you want to make sure, for instance, that your staff is extremely well trained, all of your standard operating procedures are thoroughly documented, and that in the context of a disaster, you don't want your technical staff, figuring out how to do stuff for the first time. You want to have done this repeatedly over the prior months and years, because in a disaster, your clients are looking to you to get their infrastructure and their applications back up and running, in a heartbeat. And ultimately, you want to evaluate a cloud solution because it can give you greater peace of mind if you're working with a partner that has, a world-class reputation and scalability to meet your needs. So just real quick before we kind of turn it over to Ben to talk about some case studies, let's just introduce a service offering that eFolder rolled out a couple months back. We call it eFolder BDR, Backup and Disaster Recovery for Veeam. And this is a solution that combines the power of Veeam software, with the massive storage, compute, and recovery capabilities of the eFolder cloud. So for any partners out there that are deploying Veeam to your clients, if you don't yet have an offsite solution, or if you've done something, on a smaller scale in your own environment and you're looking for alternatives, this is a great choice for you. In today's webinar, we didn't spend much time really exploring the advantages of Veeam. Ben can maybe touch on some of those, but I mean, we've kind of worked under the assumption that most folks joining today have already, started deploying Veeam or have joined the Veeam Partner Program, and you're fully convinced of the value of the core software solution. And then we're really talking about how to add the cloud to those deployments. So it's probably a different webinar to go, to go explore why Veeam as such for the audience, but hopefully everybody here on today's discussion is fully versed on that topic. So what you can do with eFolder BDR for Veeam is you can partner with eFolder, and what we do is we run the Cloud Connect software in our compute cloud environment, and we'll basically, for each MSP that's partnered with eFolder, we'll set up a dedicated Cloud Connect virtual machine, or a virtual machine running the Cloud Connect software in our environment, and we deliver kind of a turnkey service offering to you that combines everything you need: the compute, the bandwidth, the storage, the access to the recovery environment, all in one SKU per protected virtual machine. So this is really, when you hear that acronym DRaaS, Disaster Recovery as a Service, that's exactly what we're doing here on a wholesale basis with the MSP community. And then in the context of a disaster, if there's a worst case scenario, of course, you can spin up a client's environment in the eFolder Continuity Cloud, which is our on-demand compute environment where we can do recoveries. We support VMware and Hyper-V recoveries in that environment. And then, of course, partners can, if there's a less urgent need, we can ship your data, we can ship the backups from the data center as well if there's not an emergency. But all of this, became possible with Veeam version 8, which added the Cloud Connect capability. So this is a feature in Veeam's latest release. They're already making noise about version 9, which is going to ship soon. But in version 8, it added this capability, Cloud Connect, which allows you to set up and point your backup copy jobs to a cloud repository. All the data is encrypted and completely manageable from the Veeam interface. And then what eFolder does is we run the Veeam software in our cloud, as I mentioned before, and then we turn around and provide a turnkey offering to manage service providers. And really, it's just this is your classic make or buy type decision. we are, with this approach, we're providing partners a hosted application that has a fixed cost and fixed and well understood cost per virtual machine per month, and the partner is able to avoid the capital costs and the ongoing labor costs of doing this themselves. And then you're able to really go out there and add end-to-end continuity to all of your Veeam deployments for your client. But let's talk about some real-life examples. And with that, Ben, let me turn it over to you, and let's hear about what you guys are doing.
Awesome, thank you. So yeah, we have some real scenarios that we've worked through. I'll go right into the first one. This is probably one of our biggest ones. Can everyone see the screen, I hope? So this was a legal client who had a water leak in their office, and the water got very close to the server room from a flood on the floor above, and they were relying on tape backup, local backup, but the tapes were not leaving the site. So they understood that they didn't really have the greatest backup, and I think the flood is what really gave them some insight on our backup needs to be revised. After this scenario, we went into if your tape drive got wet and your server that houses the tapes got wet, we would have to find another tape drive in order to do the restore. We'd have to get the software reinstalled to do the restore, and it wasn't a quick turnaround. So after this scenario, we've switched them over to Veeam, and we're doing local backup to a BDR, and then sending those backups off-site for them. And for us, we've seen that real-world scenarios is really what triggers people's immediate need for backup, and understanding what the restore process is associated with a disaster. So knowing that you may have backup, but if you rely on tape and maybe it goes off-site, you're relying on human interaction. You're relying on someone changing the tape, or making sure that it made it off-site safely. Things like that, making sure you have the proper hardware to do the restore. And what's really great about Veeam is when you take your backups, you're also doing a configuration backup. So if you happen to have a complete DR solution, you can restore not only your backups, but you can restore the backup jobs for easy disaster recovery. So the next client that we worked with was a nonprofit, and they were relying on replication using volume shadow copy to go from one site to another, and felt that was a decent enough backup. And their server was on the fritz and had a catastrophic failure. And luckily for them, we were able to revive the server to get them back up and running, and most of their files were replicated. But after this scenario, they saw how painful it was getting a restore and getting all their files back. So during that time, when the new server was deployed, we included Veeam. We set up all that information. It was seeded over the internet. We were getting great throughput with that, and they were moved to Veeam, and it's been working very successfully for us. Our next case study would be a site that just doesn't have backup at all. Some people, they don't seem to have a budget for it, or don't think they can afford it, or don't understand the complete urgency of it. So for this client, we were able to get them, by showing some of the same real-world examples that we've shown to some of our other clients. For us, being in New Jersey, we were impacted by Sandy, and many of our clients lost power. That was probably the biggest concern, and offering things up like the continuity cloud to be able to spin up your environment if you lose power for a long time is a big selling point. So for this client, not only were we backing up virtual servers, but we were also using the Veeam endpoint backup to back up some legacy physical servers, which you can also offsite using Veeam Cloud Connect from eFolder. So I guess, Ted, we'll go into the next slide.
Yeah, so just let's, I guess, talk to me a little bit about, you know, how do you guys, you talked a little bit about, you know, the one client who, you know, really discovered that they weren't really prepared through a real disaster. How do you talk to all the other clients? I mean, how do you guys actually price and package and sell, you know, business continuity and BDR to your clients?
Yeah, so what we like to do is include the whole solution in their managed service agreement. So it's really not a choice. It's just bundled together. They don't really have to think about it. So this could be when a new server is being deployed, or it may be deployed to their existing infrastructure. But trying to not make it such a Chinese food option of this many gigabytes is this, and the licensing for this is that. It's all kind of bundled together as a single, you know, as a single product along with the managed services.
And what that's great. And I think when we hear about partners who have kind of successfully really made huge progress on this sales front, it's really around baking it in. What would you say in your client base today? I mean, what percentage of your clients, you know, do you have kind of an end-to-end BDR solution in place?
Percentage-wise, I don't have an exact number. Specifically with Veeam, so this is, you know, a relatively newer product for everyone, but we have some clients that we're working with and having these conversations about switching them because they already have Veeam, and it's a very simple process to go over to the Cloud Connect. But we have other clients who maybe have a single physical server that are maybe using some of the other eFolder products for BDR.
Okay, gotcha. So you guys leverage the fact that eFolder can support other flavors of image-based backup if the client, you know, isn't using Veeam or, you know, just has physical servers that need to be backed up.
Yeah, we definitely like to use Veeam as much as possible. It's very robust. It's very easy to use. But for some clients, it's not always an option. Maybe they don't have virtualization, or it's just not realistic.
Okay. And then what, just to help everybody kind of understand what a typical Veeam deployment looks like, I mean, what does a typical deployment look like? How many virtual machines does the client typically have? Just talk to us a little bit about what your typical Veeam deployment looks like.
Sure. I would say that a fair amount of our deployments are a single virtual host with anywhere between 3 and 10 virtual machines. And there may be a possibility that not all of the machines are going to the cloud. You know, maybe something like a print server, it may or may not go, and it's a conversation to have with the client. And we've deployed the software both ways, whether it be a physical BDR and having the ability to spin up on that second box, or clients who have multiple servers or even single servers, maybe it's just a virtual machine. So we're really focused on getting that stuff off site.
Great, and that's a really important point, is that the Cloud Connect feature is rich enough or granular enough rather, that you can really specify which virtual machines you know, are mission critical and that you do want to back up to the cloud. So it's not a kind of an all or nothing type affair. That's, I think, really important to mention for everybody.
Yeah, it's a really great feature because, you know, you may have clients who have servers that are, you know, maybe just, you know, maybe legacy, maybe they're a print server, maybe they're some sort of utility server, maybe it's a terminal server, and you can weigh out the benefits of what does it cost to back up versus what does it cost to rebuild in a disaster, and is there real data on the server?
Right. And then can you talk a little bit about how you guys price and package?
Yeah, so like I said before, generally we're pricing this and including it in the managed service agreement. So the client isn't seeing, it's 5 servers at X amount of dollars, and this is how many terabytes or gigabytes you're getting in the cloud. It's just all kind of bundled in with our agreements.
Okay, well, great. And then can you talk a little bit about kind of your managed services practice? What other tools are in your tool set from a software perspective, either from RMM or PSA? Can you just talk about how you guys, kind of organize your business?
Yeah, so we're using ConnectWise and LabTech. And what's really great about LabTech is the integration with Veeam. It's very easy to take a look at your backup jobs, see what is successful, what has failed, get your alerting. So you're not going through and logging into each individual client and checking for an error or seeing whether the job was successful or not. So that's been really helpful for us, and also the ability to license the Veeam software through LabTech directly in a hosted model. I would say that we do have clients in both methods of licensing, only because we've used Veeam prior to the Cloud Connect feature being available, and in some cases are selling a server with a 5-year warranty and including Veeam perpetually with a 5-year support agreement right off the bat.
Okay, yeah, and I think that's one thing that's important to mention is that and I guess I'll get into this in a couple minutes, but just in general, partners can source the Veeam software from all of your existing distribution channels. So Veeam has a very robust partner program, very, very robust distribution channels. So you can go to Ingram Micro and other distribution outlets to actually buy the Veeam licenses for your clients. And then you also have an option of does the client buy a perpetual license, or are you sourcing the license on a monthly basis? Some people call it renting the software, but basically sourcing it on a monthly basis. So Veeam has 2 different partner programs. They have the Pro Partner Program, which is kind of the standard VAR-oriented program, and then they have what they call their VCSP, the Veeam Cloud Service Provider Program, which allows MSPs to source the software on a monthly recurring basis. So, just so it's clear, you don't source the software that goes on the virtual host from eFolder. You get it from these other distribution channels like LabTech or Ingram Micro, and you can then source it on a monthly basis from those outlets as well. But it is important to note that every partner that's doing business with eFolder, you do need to join the Veeam Cloud Service Provider Partner Program, the VCSP program. But that's great, Ben. So what I'll do now is I'll just kind of transition and make sure that everybody who's joined us today understands precisely how you can partner with eFolder and add this capability. I do want to remind everyone, if you've got questions, let's you just use the Q&A tool there right in the presentation manager. Let's get some questions on the board, and we'll be wrapping up our final remarks here in a moment and be switching over to formal Q&A. So just so it's clear, when you want to add eFolder BDR for Veeam, eFolder, we include the Cloud Connect license that runs in our cloud environment. So we set up that single virtual machine that's multi-tenant for each MSP. As you source more licenses from eFolder, you get more logical storage, and then you're able to organize your client base in that multi-tenant interface. eFolder, we include 500 gigabytes per protected virtual machine. And then you have access to, the recovery cloud environment, or the continuity cloud environment, where we support Hyper-V and VMware. And just to give some kind of context here, today the typical virtual machine that eFolder protects in the cloud is using about 150 gigabytes. That's what we see kind of averaged out over, all of our partners and their customers. And we in turn bundle 500 gigs per virtual machine. So the philosophy here is to really give you a massive amount of storage, allow you to pool that at the partner level, and really get you out of the business of worrying about overages or per gigabyte cost. Because what we want to do is present you, the partner, with a wholesale disaster recovery as a service monthly fee per VM that's kind of fixed and well understood, so that you can really think about your overall profitability over time. So we want you to be able to just quickly turn that around, mark it up 2 to 5x, and then achieve a really attractive gross margin and profit over time. Because it's really all about recurring revenue and giving the client a much higher level of protection, where you're protecting their data, they're protecting their uptime, protecting them from any kind of disaster which could strike their business, bundling it into your managed service offering at a fixed and well-defined fee, monthly fee, and then you're able to avoid all those tricky capital expense and labor expenses which can eat into your profitability over time. So just another way to look at how we engage. As I mentioned, you can source the Veeam software from the other existing channels. Partners should join the VCSP program if they're going to start buying the service from eFolder, and then in turn we sell, this combined solution gets sold to our partners, who then go out and serve the end user market. Just a bit about pricing before we switch to formal Q&A. Let's see here. So this is how the pricing works. Pricing starts. It's easy to get started with eFolder. You only need to license as few as 4 virtual machines to get started. The pricing is $45 per month per virtual machine and includes that 500 gigs per VM. And then it scales down from there as you scale up. So the more and more virtual machines you're backing into eFolder, the better price you get on a wholesale basis. So with that, let me turn it back over to Ryan, and we can take some more questions from the floor.
All right, thanks, Ted, and thanks, Ben. We really appreciate the real-world perspective, and so we want to move into a live conversation here. Those of you that are with us on the phone, please feel free to continue submitting your questions via the Q&A tab, because we want to make sure that we can as many of those as we have time for here. A quick question that gets into the conversation early whenever we start talking about adding offsite, right? Obviously, you went over a couple of different scenarios, Ben, where customers, maybe they had some tape and some server and a little bit of disconnected stuff, and then we add to it an offsite replication. How have you found a successful way to explain the onboarding and the initiation process? Whether that's technically, how do we get our data into the cloud, or how long does it take, and how do we make sure that they understand the one-time effort that's necessary up front to kind of raise their game to that new level of data protection? How have you guys been dealing with that initiation conversation?
For us, let me think about that. Generally, it's pretty painless in terms of the installation, and we're working with the client to coordinate, when we can drop off a C drive, or whether they have the bandwidth to send the backups, over the internet. What is really nice about the Cloud Connect feature, or the backup copy feature, is that you can throttle it, or you can also say, only send backups from 5 p.m. till 8 a.m. and only send your backups on the nights or on the weekends, so you know that you're not really beating up the bandwidth during the day. And the new seeding option from eFolder is great. You put in a request, you get a drive that's in a case. You pop it up, you load your seed, you put a zip tie around it, and you send it off to back to the data center to get uploaded.
Excellent, because I'll tell you, that is from, when we talk to the end user organizations, and we've been doing this research for a while, asking them why do they have, what do they do for offsite backup, or if they don't do offsite, why not? And certainly there's been a lot of focus recently on the idea of, how do I even get started? Because it seems a little bit daunting. Another one, and I'd like to hear, Ben, your thoughts on this. If I go back 3 years ago in our research where we were asking about cloud backup to the end user, one of the main concerns that people had was security, privacy, data protection once we put things into the cloud. Two-part question for you. Number one, do you guys hear that objection?
We do sometimes. So what's great is knowing that it's going to eFolder. They're keeping all of their compliances. You know that they're HIPAA compliant. We know that we cannot even send the backup, and the backup job will get rejected if it is not stored and sent encrypted. A long time ago, 3-4 years ago, Veeam had an implementation to go to their cloud, and what we found was your data wasn't always encrypted, and we shied away from that, and that's actually what got us involved with eFolder, looking at some of their other products, because we had clients who were looking for an off-site backup. And now that Veeam is an offering, it just seemed to go hand in hand for our clients.
That's great. And Ted, I'd like to hear kind of from your point of view, as we talk about the public cloud versus, the perceptions that customers have. I guess, number one, how are you seeing successful overcoming objections with the questions of security and privacy? And then second part, maybe the technical answer, where does the data reside once we put it into an eFolder cloud offsite solution? What are some of the technical details that are associated with that?
Well, I'd say that there's really kind of two different classes of clients. There's the clients who have a lot of questions and are very well versed in a lot of the data privacy and security issues. And it's great to have those clients because they keep us honest, so to speak. They challenge us, and for those clients, I mean, it's great to go in and educate them on all the safeguards that are in place that Ben just mentioned. eFolder, we operate from highly compliant data center environments. We're HIPAA compliant. We sign business associate agreements with our MSP partners, and we take encryption and secure processes very seriously, in everything we do, and we have custody of the data, whether the data is getting sent over the wire encrypted or it's being sent encrypted on the seed drive like Ben mentioned. We take it very seriously, and it's great to educate those clients. Now, that being said, there's lots and lots of clients, I'd say probably far more than half, that aren't asking the right questions and just aren't aware of these issues. And it's not okay to just keep them in the dark. I think it's an area where MSPs can really show a lot of thought leadership by educating clients in a friendly sort of way. Don't make it, don't make it gobbledygook. Don't make it overly complex. Try to talk about outcomes and results and the reasons why behind robust security and privacy. Because it's not always obvious, and it's not always obvious to clients where there's pitfalls. I mean, most clients won't, immediately understand, well, why is it a big deal to have the data encrypted if you're shipping it with UPS? Well, sometimes the drives get lost. Sometimes drives can get lost, right? And you want that data encrypted. So it's, bad news or good news, right? There's a lot of clients that just don't know. And it's our job as a vendor and as the MSP channel to, take all the proper safeguards, and we do that, together. And then I think it's a huge marketing opportunity because if you look at it, there is still a huge, huge portion of the end user market where people have inadequate backups, they don't have business continuity, they don't have solutions that really can provide high degrees of uptime for their operations. So there's just still tons of greenfield opportunity, and I think the marketing opportunity for partners is to get new clients is to be a local expert. Speak at the chamber events, speak at business events, be a guest speaker, have your standard security and backup, pitch deck that you can give on, at the drop of a hat. Those are all the things that partners should do. Now, and just a very practical question, where does eFolder house our data? Where do we run our data centers? So we co-locate in world-class data centers. We've got 4 of them worldwide, one in Atlanta, one in Salt Lake City, another one in Kelowna, British Columbia in Canada, and then Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So we operate all of these services from those environments. I don't think we have anybody from Europe on the line because of the time. But today, the eFolder BDR for Veeam service is offered in the U.S. and Canada, but not yet in Europe.
Okay, so one more technical question for you. One of our participants sent in, once the data is actually in your data center, is the data isolated by client and then inside that by VM and by subdirectories, or is the data ever pooled in any way in terms of your infrastructure management?
Well, let's see here. So how to parse that? The service we deliver, partners, is multi-tenant. So in the virtual machine that you have access to, where you can access the Veeam software running in our cloud, you have logical and discrete and granular access to each one of your clients. All of the data that gets sent to us is encrypted, and then when it's stored in a large pool, if you will. So, but it's all encrypted. I think the important thing is that at the service layer, it's multi-tenant, and you have discrete access to your clients, and you are able to go in and set storage quotas per client. But when we really, eFolder, we store, something north of 45 petabytes of data today worldwide. What we do with the data is we do what we call silent data corruption protection. So we actually take every copy of data, byte of data, and we actually create 3 additional copies of it, and we store it on physically separate drives in the storage nodes. And then we proactively repair the data if it's ever corrupted. And when you're operating at 45, 50 petabytes of data, there will be data corruption. It's just a given of how these technologies work. There's firmware bugs and all sorts of crazy stuff that happens, and you just have to make sure you proactively repair it. So hopefully that answers the question on kind of what happens to the data when it lives in the cloud.
Yeah, Ben, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's it's a centrally managed console, but all your clients are separate. And if your client happened to get into Veeam or is poking around, or you gave access to your client, to the Veeam portal or to their individual Veeam on site, they would only be able to see their own data, and there's no way that they could see another client's data.
That's right.
Every client has their own encryption key that you're going to set up, so they can all be different. They can all be the same, however you determine you want to do it.
And, I think maybe one of the most important points that comes out in that discussion from what both of you guys are describing there, this is a layer of, and what I will call enterprise class data management best practice that the typical SMB customer would either A, probably know how to do, or B, have the discipline, the time, the bandwidth to be able to do that kind of stuff on their own. We hear a lot of people say, well, when I pitch off-site backup to my customers, their objection is, we could do this ourselves. And I hear about outages in the cloud, but Ted, as you're describing there, the layer of robust data management and the enterprise class things that are done to physically replicate and correct the data, that is above and beyond anything that we would see at the typical end user. So I think that as MSPs, to your point, Ted, I think it's a good opportunity to begin to educate our customers, not just what's affordable or what's the easiest way to get a backup, but when we start protecting really valuable data assets, what's the right way to do this stuff? And nobody's ever going to do that on their own, but boy, if we can show them how we can provide that as a service, that becomes a really valuable exercise.
Yeah, and I guess I would add. I mean, I think there's two things to talk about with your clients. I mean, if they want to know more about your vendor relationship, how you're doing it. I mean, you're working with a company that specializes in this, has high degrees of expertise, has massive scale, and is service focused. And as you know, our moniker is the people behind your cloud. And you know, we stand behind the MSP, and you know, all of this additional detail is critical for service providers for you to be able to answer those questions. And you will, and you're gonna, and the large, as you move up the food chain, if you have larger clients, if you're pushing into the mid-enterprise space, you will have sophisticated buyers. You will have IT staff where you're really having a co-managed IT discussion, and you will have, you know, you have to, there is some convincing, so to speak, to say, look, this portion of what you guys need to do in your mission, you should outsource to us, and here's why. And one of the, I mean, I was at I'm at a trade show, I'm at the Veeam trade show right now, and was talking with end users about this last night. And it's, you know, for a lot of these end users, it's a make or buy decision as well. And really, what you want to be able to provide the more sophisticated client is, of course, the trust and confidence that it's going to be done right, but also the value of being able to outsource something that is really not core, so that they can focus their time on more high-value projects. I mean, that's, outsourcing disaster recovery is a great choice for a lot of IT departments they've got too many projects and not enough people, and they can't just throw bodies at the problem. And so working with a solution provider or a service provider to kind of co-manage IT is a great choice.
Yeah, Ted, we absolutely have agreements like that where, you know, there may be a few IT staff on site, and we are just handling, you know, the backups and the disaster recovery.
Yep.
And see, I think that a killer takeaway there from the conversation, while DIY approaches may be appropriate for certain elements of what the customer is trying to deploy, especially with new applications and strategic business initiatives, they may want to do that stuff in-house. But when it comes to regulatory compliance and just the bulletproof protection of vital business information assets, I think maybe the reliance on an expert is a little bit more valuable than a DIY approach would ever be able to get to. One last...
Yeah, things change. And I think the other comment I'd make is that things change. I mean, a lot of clients you'll talk to, they'll have gone back and forth. They may have had a bad experience with a service provider, so they brought it in-house, and now the company's doubled in size, and they did a big merger and acquisition, and now they have like 3 more data centers to look after or something, and things change. So I mean, I think that's the other thing to keep in mind as you engage with the more sophisticated end of your clientele is yesterday's decision might not be the right decision going forward.
Excellent point. One quick question, Ben, from your point of view, as you are bringing customers in there, you had indicated that you charge for this as part of the overall portfolio, the standard engagement with your customers. When you are bringing a new customer on board with this stuff, is there a separate additional charge that you incur from the vendor side for the setup and initiation process? And then as a part 2, do you charge a separate fee to your customers for the setup and initiation?
So the first part was, is there a charge from the vendor for the setup? None that I know of. It's just a monthly fee that you're going to pay to eFolder, and however you're going to get your Veeam licensing, and it really depends on the agreement. Some agreements maybe we charge a 1-month startup fee, and some contracts we might just include it. It really just depends.
Okay, so
what I can say is it's a very quick deployment. In our experience, Veeam is a quick install. Getting your backup repository set up is a quick install. Getting your jobs kicked off. It's very painless.
Okay, that's very good to know, and certainly something that we've heard as an open question for managed service providers who are not yet getting into this process. They are not quite clear on how all the economics work. So I think your real-world experience is a very helpful thing.
We've had I've had account managers, add it to their managed service agreement, and we've deployed it then maybe the same night or the next day, and at least have a local backup going almost immediately. And depending on the speed of the internet, you could have the backup up in the cloud in hours, maybe a day. Or if you seed it, your data is going to end up there in anywhere between three days to maybe a week. You're going to know you'll have your stuff in the cloud, but at least when you get it shipped out, you know that it's at least partially off-site.
Absolutely. Well, and again, this is why this kind of conversation is so helpful to the MSP community, is that while we might take for granted that these services are out there, it's still not a service that's provided by every MSP, and it's absolutely not yet a service that is being consumed by every end customer organization. So, Ted, you said it at the very beginning that there are great technologies, and the evolution of this space has been very rapid to get to a point where we have robust solutions available for customers, but most of them are still not yet consuming a structured, standardized, professional approach to backing up and protecting all of their data assets. So that is something that we want to make sure that the MSP community is comfortable with, how they can bring it in to their own business operations, as well as how they can go out and sell it to their end customers. As the clock, that's all the time that we have available for today's conversation. Lots of good questions that came in. Great conversation back and forth. And very much for your time and for being willing to share your real-world expertise. Obviously, we keep doing these things, so those of you that are listening in, our next webcast is actually scheduled for the 29th, talking about 3 ways to optimize your IT business management side, not just the technology. And so we'll be getting back together again, but obviously online at thevarguy.com under our webcast tab, you can find a whole schedule of the meetings that are scheduled in this series in the future. So thank you everybody for joining us for today's call. We really appreciate your time and participation. Thanks very much.